Been a while since we've done something like this, but I saw this article, I just couldn't resist it. So anyway, this is good news, good topic for a video regardless. They have basically confirmed what dungeons we're going to have in season 1 of Dragonflight. So if you haven't followed this discussion, we are going with the kind of the season 4 model of Shadowlands. We're going to go with that forever now, it seems. We're just going to have kind of random dungeons in the pools. I'm not really sure who came up with this, to be honest. Now, probably like 6 months ago, I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but a while ago, I made a video about how I don't like this. Okay. And I didn't like it at all coming into the season 4 concept. My big issue was that you never have any time to learn the dungeons. And like, I'm not the best player, so I usually make up for that lack of skill with like dedication, raw hours invested, right? Well, that's not possible anymore. And you're seeing that play out with like a dungeon like Iron Docks. I'm struggling in a lot. So I was definitely not looking forward to that in a new expansion, because usually you'd have that whole full like 12 months to 24 months of dungeons to learn them. But in the first season, it just doesn't really matter, because that's not going to be true anyway. Like if you go back and look at season 1 of Shadowlands, I was equally struggling, in fact, more so. So this might actually be better for me in season 1, because I already know 4 of these dungeons, right? We'll see. We'll see what happens. So let's take a look at the actual pool. Ruby Life pools. This is one that I actually did. I made some videos on early dungeons, and they weren't really getting any views, and it seemed like a lot of people like don't even try to look at beta stuff, so I just kind of stopped. But I did make a video on that, and honestly, I think people are going to love that dungeon because it's very, 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 very short. It's got 3 bosses, but it's really got 2 bosses, and yeah, it's very short. Let's put it that. It was like a 10-minute dungeon on heroic. So we'll see what it's like on Mythic Plus. We'll see how. The problem is, there's like, I don't know how you would skip any trash whatsoever, so it's probably going to be a pain, but it's probably going to be like the Grim Rail in terms of how it plays out. I have not actually done Algethar Academy yet, so I don't know anything about that yet. That one came out during the season 4, so I haven't been on the beta too much. Knucklehead Offensive, though, is a really interesting one. This is actually a dungeon where you can use dragon riding. And people are like trying to already make comparisons between this and the Oculus, but I don't really remember the Oculus that much, to be honest. But I'll just tell you that you only use dragon riding to travel in between places that you fight. The zone is actually the dungeon, which is freaking awesome. Like it's the whole zone. The whole zone is the dungeon. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I'll tell you, this zone is really gorgeous, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like in dungeon form. I did this twice now, and it's just like the travel part of it just doesn't really matter. But if you didn't do it, like if for some reason you didn't have dragon riding, you're not upgrading that key. Let's put it that way. And then Azure Vault, I've done a few times. I actually tried soloing it because I thought it'd be an interesting thing to solo. It's got some really interesting mechanics in there. I think it's also relatively short. I mean, it didn't take me very long to solo it. It only took me like an hour. So, yeah, I don't really know. Haven't really done it with a full group, but it's got a lot of magic. Let's put it that way. It's basically like a blue dragon place. So, kind of like the Nexus, right, from Wrath. So, and then we have the 4 dungeons from the old expansion that are coming with this. And this is why we're making this video, because there's some debate. Let's put it that way. So we have Court of Stars. We've known about Court of Stars the whole time. That's one of my favorite dungeons ever, if not my favorite dungeon ever. And I'm happy to see that back, that's for sure. We have Halls of Valor, which is probably up there with one of my favorite dungeons ever as well. This dungeon is really, 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 really fun to tank. And, there's some concerns that are expressed in this post as well. But to be honest, I don't think it's going to be an issue, right? Because, like, I really do feel like those issues with Legion are gone. The reason that they were hard back then are not a thing anymore. So we'll see. I got to give Blizzard some credit. They have done a lot of tuning, but at the same time, the Karazhans didn't work out well. So I am, at least Court of Stars saw Legion Mythic Plus. Halls of Valor has not been used since Legion. It's not been used for Time Walk, not been used anywhere, to my knowledge. So that is not a little scary, a little scary because of how many times I had to solo bosses. Let's put it that way. Anyway, the other one, Temple of the Jade Serpent, we knew this one for a while now. My concern with that dungeon was that it's going to be very linear, and it's just like Grimrail. So, 3 months ago, I would have been like, oh, this one's going to suck too. But Grimroll actually is a very generous timer. And now who knows if this is intended or not, because it's very strange that that is so generous and Iron Docks is so tight. But as long as these dungeons that are short and have nothing that you can skip and very little wiggle room to make up for good deep, like the thing about a short dungeon is, if you have like a 5 minute dungeon, that's gonna be the tightest dungeon, right? Because it's gonna be 5 minutes, meaning it's only gonna be 2 trash pulls. So if you do twice as much damage as Blizzard expects you to do, you're only gonna be like a few seconds ahead, you know? But if you have 50 trash pulls and you do twice as much damage as Blizzard expects you to do, then you double or triple upgrade that key. You know what I'm saying? So you really have to be on your game in these short dungeons. A single mistake can be very devastating unless the timer is tuned ultra lenient, like we saw with Grimrail. So it's all going to come down to that. All going to come down to count. All going to come down to what affixes we have where in Temple of the Jade Serpent. And the one I skipped is Shadowmoon Burial Grounds. Now, this is probably the worst decision they can make because if you've ever seen Shadowmoon Burial Grounds Mythic or Challenge mode, you will know that the dungeon's terrain does not work. Okay, it doesn't function. It's literally non-functional. I don't know how the hell they managed to do this, but I would encourage you to go look at some old challenge mode footage from Shadowmoon's Burial Ground. I've actually showed it multiple times on stream over the years. And if they do not fix that, if they do not dramatically put some work into that, it's going to be a mess. And you know what's going to happen? The exact same thing that happened in WoD. This dungeon came in a state that was completely unacceptable, and Blizzard was forced to not fix it because there was like 3 minute timers of this key, and if they fixed it, it would be like 7 minute timers. Would ever like there would never be anything matching it. So the people who did it the first 2 weeks of the expansion were just going to be the best times for the rest of the expansion. And so hopefully this time that won't occur because that is going to be a, yeah. I mean, you would hope that they know about this by now, but I saw actually messing around with it. People still can do what they used to do. Basically, you can use these like toys and random things to just like get under this railing, and then you can just do whatever the hell you want in the dungeon. To the point where I've seen people actually start at the wrong place. I never understood that glitch. I never did that one myself. But yeah, you can actually just go right to the second boss, or right to I guess it's the first boss. You can just go right there. Like I never understood that. But anyway, yeah. So you know, whoever wrote this article is talking about the one shot capability. The bosses are full of one shots. Yeah, and that's not really true. It's really just Herja. God King Scovold Fellblaze Rush, though, is an interesting one because this used to, it did do a lot of damage, but at the time you used to be able to avoid it. And the way you would avoid it was you would just be at max range and then you just have to move really quick because he wouldn't actually damage you until he reached you. So he'd basically like sprint over to you and then cleave you effectively. And so in the past, there used to be spells like, you know, we had Blink, we had Disengage, we had Wind, the Wind Leap thing for Shaman, these types of things that you can get out of this mechanic with. Well, what of those are still in the game? I don't actually know. But if it's still dodgeable, yeah, that's really not dangerous. But I think even if you were max range and you're just ready for it, you can just walk away from it and still not have any issues. But yeah, the trash is definitely something I'm concerned with for sure. The opening and the middle, really the middle trash is very complicated, and yeah, the inspiring effects would make it absolutely awful. He's right about that. And then Shadowmoon's Burial Ground, pretty, you know, kind of embarrassing here. I would really encourage everybody to just look because you're talking about spiders. Nobody's doing spiders, buddy. Go look at the Shadowmoon's Burial Ground challenge mode. You'll be surprised at what this game used to look like. But here is what we're checking out. So I'm actually really shocked by these comments, to be honest. You know, I used to be around the community a lot and try to help them and try to make everybody smarter and better. And I didn't succeed. Let's put it that way. So I gave up. But yeah, this is really even more surprising than I expected. Some of these comments. So let's read them. Halls of Valor. No fucking way. Please don't. You know, my initial reaction is like, why would people dislike Halls of Valor? What are the odds that any of the people who are commenting right now on this post actually did like a serious Mythic Plus in Legion? I think nobody, right? Like, I mean, let's be serious here. I think very, very few people actually did it. So why would you not like that dungeon? That's like one of the coolest dungeons ever. I fucking love that. That dungeon is gorgeous. It's gorgeous, man. It's one of the coolest places to be ever. And there's a bit of an old meme from it too, where I always, whenever the boss mechanic would go out, I used to go, Drake Riders to me. And people would just say it on stream all the time. Anyway, why can't we have the first season of a new expansion with all of the new dungeons? At least wait a season, honestly. It's a new expansion. I want to do all the new stuff. I don't want to do old dungeons when a new expansion comes out. And I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think that season one should be all 8 of the new dungeons. And the weirdest thing about the choices that they made is none of them are Uldaman. Uldaman is like a pre-patch dungeon, basically. Like, why would that not be in season one? That seems so weird. So I don't know what they're going to do with the actual dungeons, but I guess this means that the other 4 are going to be for season 2. So anyway, this guy says, okay, but can we get 8 new dungeons first, please? This is a really stupid comment. This guy, it's so weird how dumb people. Don't you think it's like weird how just like I try not to be like that critical of people, but it's like you're really just stupid. Like you said something stupid. Maybe it's not you. Maybe you're just having a bad day. Maybe you just typed something dumb and you didn't proofread it. But you're just saying really dumb things. Okay. I don't like paying for recycled Mythic Plus endgame content. Have you ever done Mythic Plus, dude? That's exactly what it is over and over. Every season, it's recycled. Like, what are you talking about? You don't pay for it either, buddy. You pay for WoW. You don't have to play Mythic Plus. You don't like paying for. Well, what are you paying for? What part of this are you paying for, dude? These people are so like just they say shit that it's just like if I was Blizzard and I read this, I'm like, okay, well, I can't take this guy serious, right? Like you can't take this as feedback. But anyway, there are 8 new dungeons, yeah. And they could be 8 new Mythic Plus if they wanted, but they're choosing not to. So he makes a kind of a funny point though. Imagine if half the raid was old bosses that were just copy pasted with some number tweaks. I mean, that wouldn't be raiding, but it would be kind of funny if that did happen. Anyway, we don't want Halls of Valor or Card of Stars. Who says that? Who would not want Court of Stars? Honestly, like who would not want Court of Stars? It's universally one of the most loved dungeons from what I can tell. I don't know anybody who dislikes it really, and I think I met one person who disliked it. I can't even remember. And it's got the most. It was like the easiest dungeon. It was like it's like the Necrotic Wake of Legion, and that's saying something because Necrotic Wake, Legion was not easy. There was a lot of really hard dungeons in it. We only have 4 Dragonflight dungeons. I mean, come on, dude. How do you guys not know this? How do people who read Wowhead pay this little attention? That's going to get very old very fast for people leveling and doing normal /heroics, won't it? No, it's not really going to because you're an idiot and you didn't read anything about this. Not like this, please. There are so many better options. I agree. There are way better options. Shadowmoon Battleground is the one that sticks out for sure. And like I said, I've talked so much about it, but just have a look at it because it is in a weird state. And even today, a lot of that I've seen people mess around in there. I can't remember why, but I've seen video of people doing it still in like modern WoW, and it's still possible. Basically, like you can use a toy to just skip a whole part of the dungeon, and it's really weird. Anyway, looking forward to these as long as we don't spend the first 3 weeks in a tuning nightmare. Yeah, I totally agree, and that is going to happen. That's going to be the big issue moving forward here. They're probably going to be all over the place because you're inviting dungeons with all different types of mechanics. Um, if I said anything about the WoD dungeon so far, I would say they're not well tuned. You know what I mean? Grimrail's worked out, but I do think we just kind of got lucky or something because I really don't understand why they thought that timer would work for that dungeon and Iron Doxes would work for that dungeon. Almost feels like there's something wrong with that. And so I don't know, but yeah, I think the WoD dungeons are the ones to be the most skeptical of, and we have probably see it's different than Grimrail for me because Grimrail I just hated as a dungeon. Shadowmoon Battleground I like. I don't have anything wrong with that dungeon, and if they fix the problems I'm gonna have with it, then yeah, I can't wait to do that dungeon. Sounds cool. You know what I mean? The other problem that like this dude in the article made a point of though is that you can't really combine any trash in there, so it's gonna be a really weird Mythic Plus. But that's fine by me. I don't really care about that yet, So anyway, I guess there will be portals to Stormheim and Stormwind Valley, like the current ones to old dungeons. Yeah. So well, yeah. I don't know where the portals would take us because now we have Court of Stars. Yeah, there's gonna be portals all over the place, I guess. Anyway, we only have four Dragonflight. Oh, we read that part yet. Okay, let's see. Please let us play new dungeons at least in season one. Yeah, and again, I do agree that we should have 8 dungeons season one, and then from there on they could start mixing them up. I think that'd be a better option. But I agree with that sentiment that it's like you're trying to get excited for new content, and you're not even able to do those dungeons for 6 months or something like that in Mythic Plus. Seems kind of weird, don't you think? Anyway, the last poll give us Grimrail, so no more polls for dungeons, please. Yeah, I think we're good on polls. Honestly, you can pretty much tell that this community has no idea what they want as a consensus, so there's no reason to be polling anybody. And I think the big issue with the poll the last time was they literally let anybody vote. Like, I'm not even sure you had to have a subscription to vote. So why would you let those people vote? Like, you know what I mean? If you don't actually even play the game, why would you vote on this? If you don't actually do Mythic Plus, why would you vote on this? So no thanks. This is not some nostalgia trip where we're just bringing back dungeons for fun. It's supposed to be competitive and difficult, and I think we see, unfortunately, I think we see in season 4 with Karazhan, and you can compare like lower Karazhan in week 1 to Junkyard. It's like this didn't really work out. Didn't really work out. You know what I mean? So they got a lot of work. But I love the season. Like I said, I'm actually really happy with the season, but it's just fun, but it's just not really competitive. It doesn't feel like competitive. And even if you watch the Great Push, it doesn't look competitive either because they're doing one dungeon like 10 keystone levels higher than another one. It's like, okay, why aren't we getting all the dungeons coming out with the expansion? I mean, like, why do you ask this question? Do you not know that this is happening? Are you genuinely not? You're a wowhead commenter. You're on here leaving comments, but you don't actually read the posts that have come out in the last 6 months. Anyway, I love it. I'm happy with that, except for Court of Stars and Azure Vaults. Vault is so brutally tuned on Heroic. I'm scared for Mythic. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, another Grimrail comment. Yay, people who didn't play Legion or WoD will go on Mythic Plus without knowing specific strats, and they'll probably get flamed for it. Well, to be honest, that's a big problem in Season 4 as well. That's why we have the Legion Karazhan situation here. I think that's pretty much wrapping it up like in a nice little shell there. The bosses are hard, and I bet this will probably happen again in Halls of Valor. But at least the first boss isn't that hard. Hersha is the one that I'm always worried about, but we'll see. So then this guy, corrects him. That's a Mythic Plus rotation. Good way to put it. People still don't get they do this so they can provide a new set of dungeons every season. I like the concept. I just wonder what happens in season 3 and 4. We start using like 2 of the Shadowlands dungeons, or you probably like have this set of 4 for Dragonflight, then this set of 4 for season 2, and then you mix 2 and 2 for the next 2 seasons, maybe. Anyway, yes, Halls of Eye was by far my favorite Legion dungeon. Don't give in to the scared wuss part of the community, Blizzard. We all saw what happens when the community chooses. Well, yeah, certainly. It's probably too late now. I mean, if they're putting it in the beta and they haven't even announced it, that's probably indication that it's moving forward. So, is it too much to ask for 8 new dungeons and a new expansion? I thought the reasoning for season 4 was to give Dragonflight devs more time. No, that why would you think that? What the Well, you thought the expansion was supposed to come out in like September, and they pushed it back and did a season 4 instead? No, the reason they did season 4 was to give season 3 enough, not be super long, which I don't actually think needed to happen, honestly. But I'm actually really pleased with season 4. I like the whole like 1 year last tier. I quite like that because you get to this weird upper reach of gear that you never really wouldn't you'd never normally reach, and then the whole game kind of just opens up at that point. But anyway, that had nothing to do with Dragonflight. Obviously, it's really even dumb to even assume that. Um, so what is this excuse for season 1 of Dragonflight? It's not an excuse. You just don't understand what's happening here. You don't seem to read the posts that Blizzard puts out, which is ironic considering you're on a website that posts them and people check religiously. And then randomly he makes his big stand here. Also, RP has no place in pluses. I'm gonna tell you right now. No offense to anybody who's reading this and says this, but whenever I see the word pluses to describe Mythic Plus, I assume that you don't actually do keys seriously because I don't know anybody who does who calls them pluses. That sounds like what like a noob would call them, to be honest. I have the same thing with golf. A couple phrases when I hear people use them in golf, I'm like, okay, that person doesn't golf. But anyway, okay, that's a confused person. Personally, I'm looking forward to it. So don't include me in your "we don't want XYZ" tantrum. Yeah, exactly. That's like kind of weird to say that we don't want something, man. I really don't know. Like I said, the games community can just not reach a consensus on anything. I've been calling this for years. If you do something that I like, well, then now there's a new person who doesn't like it. Like if I hated something and then you fix it so I like it, well, now there's a person who liked it in the past not liking it now. And they do this all the time. And this is the thing with WoW that I think is actually probably hurting them the most. If they were just true to their direction and just stuck with it for 15 years, maybe there would be less players or maybe things would be different. But you would at least have some consistency. And if you like the game, you would know you would like it for a long time. I think I've gotten lucky with Blood DK, very lucky, honestly. And they haven't made any crazy class changes since Legion. But, the way they changed Paladin, I thought it worked really well. Kata, Mop, Wad, I loved it. And then all of a sudden they just decided to completely change everything about it. And, that was disappointing to me. So, but hopefully that kind of stuff is behind us, at least with class changes. Looks like the talents are really making a big splash on that. So this guy says, the only part of Quarter Stars I don't like is trying to find the Dreadlord at the party. And that's true too. I mean, to be fair, that part is kind of weird, but it's not really like, what do you not like about it? It's just like another minute added to the key. That's not really anything to dislike. I agree, though. That would have been a great Quarter of Stars. That could have been really good for season 4. Um, this is really weird. This is where the comments get really weird. Or develop more dungeons than 8. Add dungeons each patch and not a big mega dungeon every 9 months and wait another 9 months to get this big mega mythic dungeon on. Okay, what are you talking about 9 months, by the way? What game are you playing that the seasons are 9 months? Anyway, or just mix old and new dungeons on second patch, not at launch. And I come back to that. I do agree on that. That's what it should be, but this is just a method to keep players on game, not to please or for the sake of fun. It's really those kind of comments are so strange to me, don't you think? Do you think Blizzard is actively trying to trick you into playing the game? And that if you are tricked into playing the game, that you're not experiencing pleasure doing that? Like, is that really what you think is happening? Do you understand like brain chemistry that poorly that you don't understand that if you're like tricked into playing a game, it's because you're enjoying it, right? Like you're exhibiting the feedback loops that are positive, right? Like what do you think that there's like some like that they're like fucking changing your personality? That they're like manipulating your emotions? I mean, I'm not really sure why people say this kind of thing. If you want to play the game, then you should play it. And if Blizzard can convince you to play it, then you want to play the game, right? That's the way I look at it, right? I mean, they've never forced me to play the game physically. They've never come to my house and knocked on my door and said, better fun log ombo. It's never happened. I've never played the game in a way I didn't enjoy all day, every day. You know what I mean? I literally play it sometimes 80 hours a week, maybe more at times. And I've never done a thing I disliked. I mean, maybe for a few hours, a total like in a total expansion. It's just really strange to me how people try to make this like if it's like Blizzard's like fucking ruining their lives. I don't think it's healthy. I really don't. And whether or not it's actually the way people feel, I don't know. But you can always tell when somebody's obsessed with the game, or it just this is like clinical obsession is very common to spot because they'll greatly exaggerate about things. So whenever you see this kind of comment, there's no reason to add this. This doesn't help this guy's argument. It doesn't make his point. It doesn't, 9 months. It's irrelevant. It's wrong too, So it's like, okay, this guy is obsessed. He's too close to the topic, is the way I always put it, and he's not thinking clearly on it. And he's just misinformed. You know what I mean? I don't really understand that because he's basically asking Blizzard to make more than 8 dungeons, but there's no way to do that. Like if you think about it, where would these dungeons go? I think that's the thing that everybody doesn't actually think about. Where would the dungeons go? Where do you want them to go? If you have, say, somehow you have 16 dungeons, well, that's now 4 dungeons per zone, dude. Have you looked at the zones? Where are you going to put those dungeons? Like, it's already done. They're not going to make 4 dungeons per zone. They've never done that. Ever. You know what I mean? Unless you want, like, the dungeons like in Wrath, where it's like this tiny little hallway with 5 dungeons portals in it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, they could do that, yeah. But would they? No, I don't think so. Because to be honest, man, I think those dungeons are some of the least inspired ones they've ever made. where they basically make a dungeon first and then an area second. That's the way I look at those dungeons in Wrath. And even really like the trial, the Crusader dungeon as well. It feels very shoehorned. It's like, well, we need a dungeon for this content. What are we gonna do? You know what I mean? So no, I don't really think adding more dungeons to the game is a good thing. It doesn't really solve this problem either. This person is still going to be upset. And I think it's really weird that after all these comments, nobody seems to remember why they were doing season 4 of Shadowlands in the first place. And you know, like I said, there was a lot of I didn't think it was going to work, but it did. I think it worked. I think it worked well. You know what I mean? It shifts up the way you play the game. It changes so you're not completely farming the same gear and trinkets over and over and over again. It makes you have a different kind of approach to the game. It's working. I mean, that's just. I think it's just like a fact, right? I mean, I don't know anybody who would say it's not, to be honest. Maybe people quit instead because they didn't want to even try it. I think it's working. So yeah, I don't know, man. These people who are like kind of just saying like the game doesn't develop enough content, they're just not paying attention. And you know, people try to help them, but it doesn't really help because this is the issue, I think, right now with the community. You know, there's a lot of issues with the community, especially in the Mythic Plus scene. But I think the big issue with the community is that everybody is very quick to just blame Blizzard for anything that they even perceive as unfun or unhappy. They're unhappy with, you know. And I don't really think people fully understand how, you know, I was shocked myself, man. I started looking at this back at the beginning of BFA. At the end of Legion, I started looking into brain chemistry and, you know, I guess what you'd call psychology, behavioral psychology. And I was shocked how easy it is to solve a lot of the problems that these people are exhibiting because I was exhibiting them myself, you know. This obsessive nature with the game, overreacting to small things, you know, just general burnout. What do they call it? Sensory fatigue. These things are easy to solve. They're not hard to solve. And I think if a lot of people just spend a little bit less time, you know, freaking out on the internet over stuff they don't even understand, and a little bit more time tending to their mental health, they would probably be making like, you know, they would have a different opinion of a video game that they're supposed to be playing for fun. And that's all my recommendation ever would be. Because you kind of just embarrass yourself when you say some of this stuff, and it doesn't help Blizzard. It doesn't help the game. You just kind of make a fool of yourself. You know, I'm trying to be rational here. Like this is not helping anybody. So you come here to blow off steam on the Wowhead forums. Well, you know, it's just not helping anybody. I don't think it's helping them either. And the thing that I really dislike about it is it really makes the game look like it's in shambles. You know what I mean? Where you have all these people who are just screaming about like stuff they frankly don't even understand. Like look at this. This is where we'll end here because this is actually the best response in the whole thread. Um, this guy, you know, you remember this comment, and then he says, "You don't like paying for Mythic Plus recycled Mythic Plus content? I guess you canceled your subscription when season 2 started, then, right? Yeah, season 2 of Legion, right? I mean, that's what the game is. You know what I mean? And so if you're not aware of that, or you're somehow still mad about that, like 6 years later, I feel bad for you because there's something this isn't what should be normal, I think is the way I would put it. In a video game that we're all choosing to play and we're playing hopefully because we want to be playing it. I can't really understand the people who are like actually addicted to a video game because it doesn't really make sense to me. The game consumes my thoughts and it consumes, you know, my interest. And at times I play it too much and I have to force myself to not play it to make sure that I can have a healthy relationship with it. But at no point did I ever go like 6 hours without playing it and like having like physical alterations of my behavior. It's like that's what addiction is, right? You start to change when you don't have what you believe you need. And it's like, to me, like I don't study this. I don't know anything about addiction. I know people who have drug addiction and alcoholism and things that are actually affecting them physically and not just like, oh, I like to play a video game too much. And this is unhealthy, man. I see it's really weird to me how similar some of these people seem to act. It's like if they're mad that Blizzard didn't do what they exactly wanted and they don't really understand that that's not possible. So, because you know if you do what you want then somebody else is unhappy. So I hope that this will be solved at some point, but I don't think it ever will be. And I have to say, unfortunately, I do think it's because they're carrying that California mindset, not to smash on the whole state, but unfortunately, that state I heard this funny quote the other day. I don't really care about American politics, but it was some politician saying that they're so liberal, or they're so open-minded that their brains are falling out. And it's actually what it feels like at times, even with this company, because they're like, we're listening, we're doing whatever you want, but you're idiots, so we're doing dumb things. Like, it's just, that's how I feel it's going with the game. Like, you're listening to people who don't really know what they want. You're listening to people who don't even really play the game. They don't really spend any active time doing the content that they're commenting on. You're listening to people like this who are making contradictory statements, and then kind of demanding it. You know, like, whatever, you say something stupid, whatever, man. But like, this guy's, he's making a comment that he's basically demanding something out of. Can we get 8 new dungeons first, please? We are. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.